So visuals are important, right? We want them to be able to have moods that they can go back to that are guiding the teaching that we want them to carry and be independent with. This was an 8th grade teacher where we were playing around with poetry, and we just had them take narrative pieces and just cross out lines and then turn it into a poem. And then she also played around with how writers of poetry, by the way, something that some of you might carry, and I'm seeing it here too, this is a little bit of an older photo, this concept of good writers, a lot of people have stopped using, in which I'm sure you've studied before too. Peter Johnston's book, Choice Words, was a very life-altering book for a lot of us in the project, in the sense of, it doesn't matter if you're good or you stink. This is just what writers do. So it used to be that a lot of strategies were written of good writers do, blah, blah, blah. So shifting to have it not just be good, but this is just what writers do, can be helpful. But the idea, we do this by finding someone with jottings and rewriting them as a poem, but she took some really clear examples from her own notebook and made them visual so that kids could see what that looks like. You can add to charts daily, right? Whatever you're teaching into can be up there. This is at the American School in Monterey, where they were playing in this 1st grade with ending their stories, maybe ending with a feeling or a thought, and then the kids kind of collected. When they tried some out, they kind of posted up and played around with what that might look like. So you want to think about how do you support the content and the writing behaviors, right? Here's how writers write across pages. We think, we plan, we sketch, we add words. This is another one from Monterey, where the teachers realized that in this 1st grade, actually it was across the whole grade, they needed reminders of how to plan. Like, how do you touch each page and then sketch your pictures and then make sure your words match your picture. So they bought those little plastic menu holders that you find in, most pseudo fast food joints like Chili's or something, right, that hold the menu. And they just slid in little reminders that they can switch those out for the writers to be able to play with. But then that creates them to be independent. Like, it helps them to be independent. Like, this 2nd grade writer wanted to work on a bold ending, so he was playing around with that. He made a little plan for himself, and then he headed back in and was exploring what that work is. This teacher actually, after she taught mini lessons, she would sometimes write what it was that they had been studying on a few cards. Like, this one was bold endings, and then she kind of gave a quick suggestion, and she kept them in the writing center, right? So all classrooms tend to have some kind of a writing center. It could be fancy, it could be just a small section of your cupboard, right? But a place to find extra paper, or maybe some construction paper, or crayons, or folders. You might have date stamps there. I used to keep mentor texts there. Colleen Cruz, when she was still in the classroom, used to keep a couple of baby name books, because she did a lot of realistic fiction writing. So the idea of how do you look at baby name books to find names for your characters and know that names have a meaning, right? You might have some portable caddies, whatever's going to help you. Here are a couple of other ones. Usually in kindergarten to 2nd grade classrooms, there are at least three different types of paper. Like a box with 3 lines, a box with 1 line, a box with 6 lines, right? Or by the time they get to 2nd grade, a box with 6 lines, a box with 8 lines, a box with 17 lines, right? So the idea is they have a choice around what that's going to look like, but we're helping them to be able to make those decisions for themselves. Writing centers are a place they can come back to again and again. We can talk more about that tomorrow if you like. Now, word walls I mentioned a few times, and the idea of a word wall is that it's someplace visual that has the high frequency words, the words that are used again and again and again and again. The words they should know, not the tier 3 or tier 4 vocabulary words, or not social studies and science, but the words that they're actually using a lot in their writing. The one on the left is actually an interactive word wall. That's why it's a little wonky. The kids is the kindergarten, and the kids, they're all on magnets. They can come up and take a word, bring it back to their table, and then bring it back. Right, so interactive word walls can be really helpful. This is another interactive word wall that a lot of the words we did it because we looked around the room and a lot of the kids had words, so it was missing quite a few of them. But it's not just because someone said you should have all these words, but it's what are the words that your kids are using and that your kids need. If you do have a Portuguese and an English, it's important to keep them separate, right? But that's something too to be able to hold on to of like, what does it look like? It doesn't have to be huge, but it's, do they have a place where they can go to engage with that? This is a very well-loved one. And I was in a fourth grade and we were realizing there were a lot of homophones that kids had issues with, and teachers would say, but look, it's up on the word wall. Yes, it would say like T-O and T-W-O and T-O-O, but it wouldn't really give them any hints. So something to consider is having a quick sentence strip with the word in action. Have the kids help you move to, or put together what the meaning of that word is. So this was actually like the third week of school, and past and past were the most consistent that we were seeing as we investigated and analyzed student work. So the kids we kind of talked about what past meant and then past. And the kids wrote these sentences, or the class wrote them together. Summer vacation passed quickly. During the past year, I have become a better reader. And then for there, we decided to pick the one that they were using the most, which was T-H-E-I-R. So we made that together as well, right? It's their house, not mine. So trying to help them to see, they're not misspelling it, they're misusing it when they're putting the wrong word in. So playing around with using word walls with that can be really powerful as well. So, I appreciate you listening all day and being active with this. Let's pause and think, now what do you need to get this going? And you're going to do some of this work. Thinking about materials for writers, right? K-2, you're really just going to need writing folders, right? So some kind of folder, and then pages with the planning box and the lines. Access to those paper choice options. You may or may not have a date stamp, right? But that's basically it. You don't need a ton to get this going. You don't even need notebooks in K-2. It's just paper. Some teachers will even just use white blank paper and have them make their own boxes, right? There are different ways of doing that. 3 to 8, you're probably going to have a writing folder, a writer's notebook, and a writing folder, right? Those are kind of the two main things that they need there. That's going to be where they collect and kind of live like a writer. There are people in the world, especially Jay-Z and Mary J. Blige, talk a lot about having writer's notebooks and constantly carrying writers or carrying a notebook with them to like see the world differently and notice things. So being able to think about how do you hold on to that? Ralph Fletcher also wrote a great book called A Writer's Notebook, and that's another kind of move to help kids understand what a notebook is and how you collect your thoughts and your ideas. Now, materials for teachers, you kind of need some read aloud texts, maybe some picture books, right? It might be some short stories, maybe a novel or two, not too many, at least for writing, because the kids are not writing novels. They are not novelists. You probably need some kind of a touchstone text, right? So if you like Knuckle Bunny, right, by Williams, like you might use that as your touchstone text and go back to it again and again and again to teach from. You might have some conferring tools. You might have some conference note sheets, your own writer's notebook, or some sample pieces. Hopefully you'll also have a little bit of curriculum plans. You kind of have an idea of what you're teaching. One very tricky thing is teaching this in isolation, right? Teaching it on your own. So having someone to talk to about this, even if it's 2 grade levels, like 4th and 5th grade getting together and teaching a similar unit. The first year or 2, it's not a big deal. For the first 6 years I was at the Reading and Writing Project, grades 3 to 8 had the exact same curriculum. It just was different depending on the grade level, right? So depending on what they could do and what they were maneuvering. So So holding on to that and thinking about what those materials are, you don't really need too much. You just sort of need a focus and an idea of where you're heading, which we're going to play around a little bit together tomorrow. The other thing that I think from just past few hours of getting to know a little bit about you and your community is you also want to have a sense of community, which it seems like you already have a really beautiful start to, so I also know you're adding a lot of new students. So being able to think, like, how do we create a sense of community? How do we make sure that everyone feels accepted and engaged, right? And that we can actually take that as learning moves. Well, one by storytelling. Storytelling is such a beautiful part of the day. It could just be, you know, the first 5 minutes or as part of your morning meeting or at the end of the day. It could even just be once a week, right, where they might sit in small groups and just tell stories or talk about movements, but then get deeper into that. Lois Lowry, who's known for some pretty heavy young adult novels and children's novels, wrote a really, like, Number the Stars. She wrote Number the Stars. And, I forget how long, it was probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer. She started writing a lower level chapter book called Goony Bird Green. And it was this kind of funny girl named Goony Bird, and she was doing wild storytelling experience with her classmates. And then the teacher would chime in and say, "Oh, did you hear how Goony Bird used dialogue? Did you hear how Goony Bird stretched out the action?" And she just slowed down every step she took. So being able to do that in storytelling as well, helping them to engage with that. You can also read aloud. I very much believe that students should see themselves in a short story or a picture book as quickly into the year as you can, right? Their living situation, if they're a girl, if they like to play sports, if they're a boy and they like to play a musical instrument, right? If they live with their grandmother, maybe the color of their skin or the way that they dress or the language that they speak, right? Being able to think really carefully about read aloud is another beautiful way of creating that engagement. There's a little joke I tell in the States sometimes, especially, that there's no rule that says that Judy Blume's book, Tales from Fourth Grade Nothing, needs to be told or needs to be read in fourth grade, in the beginning of the year, right? You might read it later in the year, but if you don't read tons of short stories and lower level text at the beginning of the year, you're gonna lose a lot of your readers and writers, right, that aren't ready to jump into that. Let's also think in middle school, or if we're talking, you know, higher grade level standardized tests, they're reading short stories. They're not being asked to read novels. So how do we balance that as teachers, and how do we engage with that in a variety of ways? We might also think about encouraging students to bring artifacts of their reading or writing lives at home, right? You might say, hey, next week we're going to talk a little bit about how, like, what we like to read at home. Maybe you like to read the sports page with your dad. Maybe you like to read certain blogs. Maybe you and your mom, read songs or do karaoke. That's reading. But the idea of having that become a part of them, bringing in artifacts or an old favorite. You know, you might have fourth graders or older that are being read to at home, right? But maybe they're not. But being able to share some of those texts can be helpful as well. You might also establish some shared values of the writers in the group, right? You might make a contract together, or just like, hey, let's just really loosely put together what do we know about writing, what do we like about writing, what feels good, what doesn't feel so good. It's very difficult to feel like an effective teacher of reading and writing if you don't value your own reading and writing life, right? A lot of us were taught that we were only strong readers if we liked reading big, thick books or novels, right? If you are a self-help king and love reading self-help books, or if you know every stat about the Mundial or whatever it might be, like being able to access, I'm making huge stereotypes about women and men, but the idea of how do you actually access and show yourself as a reader and writer can be really powerful. And being able to look at yourself yourself differently. Some of you might not see yourself as a reader or a writer, and being able to teach this way is very difficult if you don't. So it's also having colleagues that you can talk about it, like, hey, you can read an Ola magazine, and like that's fine, like that's still reading. But it's being able to have a word for that or have an understanding around what that might look like. So modeling that is powerful. Also thinking about who are the people within your community. Find your diverse literacy experts that are within your school. Who are the people that love Mogulas? Who are the people that know all your go-to books? Who are the folks that know great nonfiction, right? Who are the people who kind of memorize different series books that reluctant readers might need? If you have a gathering space, like a teacher room or just a collective space, sometimes even in the hallway, it's nice to have it more at adult level than kid level, but like, hey, I'm looking for a book about, right, just how do you communicate with each other? It might even be electronically on a Google Doc or something. Hey, I'm looking for a character who does blah, 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 right? Maybe it's to support your writing work and supporting how all of it comes together. So I want to wind up by putting up some thoughts around the consistency across grade level, right? Consistency across grade level is pretty powerful in a few areas. But one thought to think about, I mentioned it a little while ago, is thinking about having common writing process language, right? That's an easy decision to make in most places, where you just say, yeah, this is kind of what we're going to put together. This is what we're going to say when we talk about moving from collecting to drafting to revising and editing and publishing and celebrating. You also might start to think about units of study. What will you teach, right? You may use some of the reading and writing project versions. You may have other versions. You may have friends who have access to other versions. But knowing at the end of this school year what the incoming class from the grade level below experienced is life transforming. So understanding and having some of those units of study you can go back to and build from is very powerful. You also might start to think about routines and management. Knowing who has meeting areas. Doesn't mean you have a rug, but you have a place to gather. Is that something that you've always done? Is it something that's a little newer? How do writers go to the writing center? When do they talk to the writing partners? Like investigating these things. I'm also not saying these need to be involved or in place immediately, but these are things to start to think about. Another thought might be materials, right? Do you know what writing folders are going to look like, or composition notebooks, or are they going to do something totally different, right? Having a plan and understanding what that can be is pretty helpful. We were playing around, I'm forgetting who we were talking about it with mentor text. So often we say, oh, you can't read that book. We read Allen in second grade. You can't read it in first grade, or you can't read it in fourth grade. Like, what about celebrating? What are the books and texts and short stories that we do go back to on purpose, right? I learned a whole lot about Scooby-Doo when I was in my 20s from one of the former deputy directors of the project that I had no idea Scooby-Doo was about, because my brain, when I was allowed to watch Scooby-Doo, which was very rarely, was not thinking about all the stuff that I learned about what was actually happening in the back of the magic bus. But thinking a little bit about how do you go back to text multiple times can be really, really helpful. And then thinking about how you're going to manage it all. So there's one, I tried to put on one slide all right? So you're probably going to deal at some time with writer's notebooks, folders, paper, writing tools, revision tools, spelling resources, mentor text, charts, writing bulletin boards. I don't have a ton of answers, but these are some things that we want to think about. Maybe these are some things we can come back to tomorrow to play around with. These are the things that tend to pop up. We've talked a lot about charts, but do we remember, or do we think a little bit about the routines around the charts and how we lay those out? Carla, I showed you, she was a third grade teacher at PNG that I showed you her schedule earlier. I thought this was so great to put this publicly. Every subject area, they had those composition notebooks, but she had the kids just run a Crayola marker down the outside. So the green one was math. The red one was reader's notebook. The purple one was writer's notebook. So So like when they looked at their cubbies, they could see which one it was. It's the tiniest little OCD move, but it so beautifully helps them to be supportive. So when you say, hey, take out your science notebook or take out your reader's notebook, you're not, which one is it? You know? A lot of folks do tend to use those bound composition notebooks because you can't pull things out without ripping them. And without having pages start to fall out. So it's great to show kids, like, don't tear things out, savor those, hold on to those pages. Kind of like in Janet Long's book we read earlier, you know, you might have a page that you hate one day, but 2 months from now, you might like some parts of it. So playing around with this is pretty important. And thinking about that consistency of grade level, and thinking a little bit about how you can share that. We're going to go quite a bit deeper tomorrow into units of study. So I'm talking in brain, but I'm not expecting it to stick too much at the end of our long day together. But the idea is that this is just an example from Alexandria, Virginia's curriculum of kindergarten to 5th grade, like across the entire year. What are the different units that they're in? So all the blues are narrative, all the yellows are opinion, and all the greens are informational. So if you're a 5th grade teacher, you can very quickly see what other grade levels have had access to, right? This is not created by admin, this is created by teachers and coaches, right? But the idea is that you can also see that every grade level ends the year with poetry in this particular district. But having a plan for what your units are going to be. What do you want to teach? You might not do 7 or 8 units, but maybe you do 5 or 6, right? Maybe you play around with what those might look like. There's another quick version, it's kind of hard to see. This is one of my favorites. This is actually end of the year. I was with some teachers right outside of Los Angeles, and they were revising their curriculum for the next year. So we wrote out what they were teaching for reading and writing, 3, 4, 5, or these versions, but they just sort of made changes. Actually, we needed this at this time, or we want to play around with this. Having a living curriculum that matches your needs and matches what your expectations are, that are also revised, ongoing, can be really, really helpful. And truly kind of set you on that path for what those different thoughts can be. So when you think about that, the one last curriculum I want to kind of toss out is this one. So this is another school where the other board had catered to, but we laid out all of the units, and we also thought about when does talk come in, when does writing about reading come in, what do routines look like. So this just helped other classrooms and other grade levels to have conversations around what that work looks like and how we can start to put that together. So thinking about that, I would love for you to take a deep breath. And I'd love for you to just stop for a quick minute and think, now what are your burning questions, right? Like, what are you thinking about for your team, whether or not you're a monitor, an assistant, a classroom teacher, what are you thinking right now, other than, is the day almost over? Because it was a long day for your first day back. What are you thinking around scheduling or structure or writing process or curriculum? I'd love for you to just take the next 5 minutes to take a deep breath, and on your Post-it, start to collect some thoughts around where you are right now, right? And is there any burning question for me? If you have any Emily questions, keep those separate, but keep some thoughts for yourself. Tomorrow, when we come together, we're going to come together in a smaller group, grade level specific group, and I'm going to start out by pushing us to look back at these. Okay, so I want you to kind of take some time, think through, right? Where is your head right now as you take a breath, right? What questions do you have for your team, right? Let's take a quick 5 minute, just pause, stand up, talk together, right? And if you're not sitting with your team, and if you want to talk to your team, feel free to shift and move, or sit and stay where you are, and just jot down some thoughts that you have around the people with you that you've been sitting together today. Okay? Take about 5 minutes to do that. I think that gets us to your time. Does that work? Yeah.
No, the one that I showed you. Yeah, yeah, I think because that's very similar to this, right? That's this. Matches pretty well. Or is that different? No, it's similar. It's just this is the assessment for the other one. But the other one, the reason why I'm saying it's not perfect is because it's not exactly matched. It's by genre, not. But it was that way anyway. Like we have something very similar to the other unit in 2011. Yes, it matches. So it's just not perfect, like lesson one and lesson two. Do you see what I'm saying? But okay, so this is the wording progression with the movement. Yeah, that matches those. I didn't even tell you we have units. And those units are woven into the box. Yes, the way that you do it is up to you. They need to show up in the box. So great one is everyone's and you could say, like, this year we're just collecting on fans and narrative and information, or this year we're just doing it narrative, but then next year we're going to do it both, right? You know, so like what would, this is an ignorant question, what would prevent just and understanding, like, I just feel like you're very, well, you could. Yeah, you need to work with these and genres, right? Or else you're just going to up with one genre. No. I just mean collecting assessments. So it's music. Maybe what we'll do is I can do it even right now. If I'm online, I'll just leave a zip file with all of those units so that you have them. And what you said too is like, we're going to start out with these, we're going to see how they serve us. You know, we're going to commit to these for some time. You say, or I would say tomorrow too, like let's have these discussions. What does this look like? How do you get these different words together and then make a plan? We're not reading well, it's hard to tell you. It's so hard about that. Because we're jumping into another risk off of this. Unfortunately, we just know. We have no. But it also changes. Yeah, like that's the other. I did find that before I tried to, you just give me what you know. It doesn't mean as much, right? Because like, what are you actually taking back? Right? Or what are the things that I'm not going to be done right? Plus he's special for it. So why not? You know? Think about
So colleagues, make sure that everyone has at least some access to that list, or that you have them, if you know that you might not be with some of the people that are sitting with you, if there's one or two burning topics that you have, all of your ideas are valuable. So being able to weave that into our time together tomorrow is pretty important. I want to make sure to revise that, or as we need to. Tomorrow, we are going to be exploring deeper into units of study, a little bit deeper into writing process, and a little bit more into assessment and what assessments might look like. So thinking about that, and getting your brains ready for that, if there are any post-its that you jotted that you feel like an immediate thing I need to see, or something that you definitely want to make sure that we talk about tomorrow, just leave it up here on the stage, or slide it onto my suitcase, and then I'll make sure to revise my plans to include that and include that thinking. It was a pleasure getting to talk to all of you. I'm going to transition you to Priscilla, who has a couple of things that she wants to share with you.
Thank you. I was talking to Emily on the side as you guys were processing some of the information. And I'm like, wow, Emily, I have 14 pages of notes. Like, my head is spinning for sure. I have a lot to process and a lot to think about. And then she turned to me and said, well, that's good. That means you're processing. And I said, well, I'm going to hold on to that thought and keep positive, because there's definitely a lot to think about. But I do want to thank Emily for such a wonderful job and for the inspiration and for really packing 4 days into one. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate you and appreciate you coming, and we're grateful for having you here. So thank you for that.
I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. We definitely have a lot to think about as a community, and we definitely have a lot to process with regards to this information. But I do believe that this is going to help take us on a journey of literacy, and on a journey of continued learning, and a scope and sequence for what is expected for our children. I think that is the most important, because when we think about what we did with literacy and what, not just us as concept, I'm speaking about concept because we work here, but when I think about other schools and other schools I've been on and their journeys of literacy, it's so interesting to see that a lot of schools don't have a scope and sequence curriculum. And some of these schools have existed for 50 years, 80 years, 60 years, I don't know, 75 years, and they still struggle with the scope and sequence curriculum for literacy. And the importance of having one, because we want to ensure that we know what our children will know and be able to do throughout their learning journey, and that it's not random and by chance. And if you get the good teacher one year, you're going to get this, and if you don't get that good teacher, well, too bad, I guess you won't learn what you needed to learn, and hopefully the teacher next year can make up for it, right? And that is not the story of learning that we want to craft. So a lot of you, when we spoke in December, it was kind of like, well, be careful for what you wish for, because if we're wishing for this literacy journey, it will definitely be a journey, we'll make it happen, but there's lots of steps involved. And we want to make sure that we take these steps thoughtfully and carefully, but at the same time that we don't neglect the steps, because it's important that our children get nothing less than the best. And what we feel is the best is to embark on this journey of Readers and Writers Workshop. That's what we believe is the best for our school at this time. There's so many other models that exist, but when we also investigated all these other models, we didn't believe that they quite aligned with our philosophy of who we are as a school, of wanting to continue to spark creativity, autonomy of thinking, and of course, it has to go back to PBL. So it has to tie into project-based learning. And we want to make sure that it does. So these are the thoughts that I kind of want to leave you with. And I do know that you guys did receive a ton of information today. But I'm sure that we're going to be able to use this information thoughtfully as we move forward. Some of you have asked us, well, what time do we start tomorrow?